Hey guys, Jack Cypher here, back with another video today. And if the getup is looking very familiar, if it's looking like the most recent chapter review that I've put out, it's because I'm filming this on the same day. I finally got a day off work, and I'm doing a lot of recording today just to help me out in case I get swarmed again. Before we get on to the video, just like I've been preferencing in my last few, these videos are now entirely unscripted. So if you see me going on massive tangents, if you see me talking over myself, that's why. I'm also filming in my living room in not the best conditions, so if this video or my videos are too raw for you guys to be able to really sit through, I completely understand. Um, but if you want to stay with me for a bit, find out my opinions and thoughts on the character that we're going to be discussing today, good old Fujitora, then stick along. Given the length of my videos, I imagine probably be here for about half an hour. But anyway, let's get on with this video, and we're going to be talking about Isho, or better known as Fujitora. Um, Before we start off with anything about him in the actual anime, excuse me, let's talk about who he was based on. I'm sure a lot of you are already aware, but Oda bases his admirals off real life actors. He does this with other characters as well, not necessarily actors, but people like Momonosuke and the story of Momotaro and all that stuff. Um, we have Fujitora being based off, what was his name? Shintaro Katsu. He's been in a few different things, but one of his most famous things is the Zaltauchi series. Zatauchi. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. If not, correct me down in the comments. It's, you guessed it, a blind samurai. Now, while we're on this subject, blind samurai in fiction and in Japanese stories is not something that's uncommon. We see it a lot we see it a lot in Western movies that take inspiration from Japanese movies as well. But it's always been a badass character, the person that you think so unassuming, that would be so vulnerable, bursts out a sword and freaking goes to town on people. And that's what Oda's going for with Fujitora here. They're often blind samurai in stories are usually quite philosophical, quite wise. They're usually not like an evil person, not including Kaname from Bleach, but he could be an exception to that rule. Um, but Fujitora definitely embodies all those traits that usually come with a blind samurai. If anything, I would actually say he's the most virtuous. And before we continue, sorry for clearing my throat all the time. I'm a little bit sick at the moment. Just try and bear with it a little bit. Um, he's incredibly virtuous and benevolent. He's justice. We know that the admirals all have a sense of justice: blind justice, lazy justice, absolute justice. Fujitora's is humane justice. That kind of says a lot about him. He's very much, he preferences the safety of civilians before any mission. He's not kind of an ends justify the means type of fellow. He's more that if he can do even the slightest thing to help someone out, he's going to take that path and he's going to do it. And we see it probably best in Dressrosa, where he won't let his men just go and cause chaos, go after the pirates or anything like that. He gets them to focus on saving all the citizens. And we see it a little bit more with his actions when Dressrosa is done. But before we get into that, probably his most badass scene, let's talk about his biggest characteristic, his biggest physical characteristic, we should say, and that is his blindness. He has two scars coming down each eye, and we find out that Fujitora himself, or Isho, blinded himself. And he preferences that he blinded himself because he was sick of seeing all the world's evils. Now, just let that sit with you for a little bit. He was sick of seeing all the world's evils. That is very deep and kind of gets me very worried about what his backstory is going to be. If we look at other One Piece characters, we're in for a real doozy. But what could that mean? I imagine the easiest answer to that would be his family has probably been killed um, by, I wouldn't necessarily say pirates. It could have been any. It could have been corrupt government workers, but I imagine something resulted in his family dying. He's probably lost a lot of loved ones. Before becoming an admiral, he was recruited through the world's draft. So he wasn't he wasn't just a vice admiral kicking around. He was kind of, from what we've seen of him, a bit of a recluse. It wouldn't be surprising if Oda sticks with some similar traits of blind samurai or blind swordsman and have Fujitora be a bit of a wanderer. So I imagine he was just wandering from island to island, probably trying to help people after everything that's assumedly happened to him. Like, he's not going to have woken up one day, you know, someone be's a little bit mean to him and he blinds himself. The type of stuff we're talking about here is drastic, drastic stuff. What he would have seen, I do think we could make an argument that might be one of the worst things we've seen in One Piece. Um, I kind of like the idea more that it has something to do with the world government side of things rather than just pirates. Um, but you might be asking, Jack, why would he be a Marine then? Well, first, he wasn't a Marine to begin with, but he may have, as he's gotten older, he may have decided that he could do more good in the Marines or a part of the world government than he could outside of it. So he may have joined the organization that may have caused all this pain that he has seen. Because we know he's very much against the warlord system and he's very much against slavery. And we'll get into those two aspects of his character a little bit later on into the video. But let's just keep rolling with his blindness here. Let's discuss everything in regards to it. Because we do see an interesting moment with him and Luffy that really gives Isho that is some really nice character development. It's in their fight while Luffy is trying to leave Dressrosa. So Luffy's just beaten Doflamingo, he's freed everyone from Dressrosa, and Isho is very hesitant to attack Luffy. He quite likes the boy in Fujitora's sense, since he's quite old. Don't actually know his age. I'll potentially put it on the screen for you guys. And they start fighting, and Luffy starts calling out all of his attacks. He's like, I'm going to punch you with my left fist. I'm going to make my right leg giant and stamp on you. All this type of stuff. And Fujitora's kind of like, what the hell are you doing? Are you pitying me? Just because I've blinded myself doesn't mean that I'm not a capable warrior. Which we know that he is. At this stage, he is stronger than Luffy. And Luffy shows his character here by saying it wouldn't be fair. He doesn't care what Fujitora thinks. In his mind, it wouldn't be fair if he didn't do that. And Fujitora cracks up. He starts laughing. It's very rare to get Fujitora to break a very kind of monotone, passive expression that he usually has. He's quite very much in control of his emotions. And this really does pop him. And he starts laughing and talks about Luffy being naive and stuff, and the fight continues on. But as he learns more about Luffy's character, he preferences that he's sorry and sorrowful that he has blinded himself, because he would love to be able to look upon Luffy's face to see what he looks like. And I just think that's a very, I dare say, touching scene of Fujitora's character that we see here. Like, he doesn't know Luffy for very long, but the fact of seeing such a notorious pirate show humility and to show his traits of a good person, like how he fought so hard to save Dressrosa. And to see Fujitora come to terms with that all the evil that he's still seeing in the world, that there might just be some people that aren't, some people that are good, and some people that he does want to look upon. It's also quite tragic because we know he's never going to get his sight back, but I do reckon it was a really nice, endearing character trait that we did learn from Fujitora. Now, just before I mentioned his most badass moment, and it's no fight scene, it's no bringing down meteorites or anything like that. As much as I love that type of fighting, like I'm here doing a YouTube video in my living room talking about a shonen battle series, sometimes it's the way an author can write a character that is just more badass than any fight scene could possibly give us. And it's Fujitora coming to King Riku after the Battle of Dressrosa, telling his men to record him on the Denden Mushi and show it to, I want to say the entire world, but I don't think it is. I think it's just the islands surrounding Dressrosa, all their neighbors. And that's partly to do to stop the war that's going in on all those countries because of Doflamingo's weapon trades. A lot of them are in conflict. But regardless, you definitely imagine that that news would spread and the whole world would have found out what Fujitora did here. And he bows down, he prostrates himself in front of King Riku and the entire world, and discloses that it was their fault that Doflamingo has been able to get away with everything that he's been able to get away with and cause all this harm, all this pain to this country, not just in this last day. I'm pretty sure Dressrosa only went on for a day despite the 100 episodes on it, 100 plus episodes on it. But he also mentions the last 10 years that Doflamingo has been inflicting like suffering on these people. And all of Fujitora's men bow down as well. And King Riku's like shocked, like, you don't have to do this type of thing, because he knows what the repercussions of this are, what this represents. You never see the world government making atonement or taking responsibility is a better word for misdeeds or anything like that. The perfect example is with Smoker down in Alabasta. And Dressrosa is a perfect mirror of Alabasta. I really like that they did have both. I know a lot of people reckon it was sloppy and lazy, that it's, princess that they become friends with, evil tyrant, try to take over the country, or in Dofi's case, already taken over the country. But I reckon the different parallels to it do make it very much an enticing story. Because with Smoker, he wasn't able to take responsibility. He wasn't able to own up to the fact that Luffy was the one that defeated Crocodile. And it has nothing to do with Smoker's morality or anything like that. It wasn't like he was trying to take credit for it. He just didn't have the necessary rank to be able to accomplish something like Fujitora did. So it was swept under the rug, and it was said that Smoker was the one that defeated Crocodile. But Fujitora, being an admiral, being one of the three ultimate powerhouses of the world government, was able, like, who's going to stop him? He was able to do what was right and not do what was easy. That's something that even in our real world that we struggle with. It's much harder to do what is good, what is right, whatever word you want to call it, rather than just be like, I didn't see that, that doesn't matter, making excuses type of thing. And Fujitora completely owns up to it, and honestly, like I was saying, one of the most badass scenes, not just of his, but in that whole arc. It was like, I love Doflamingo, he's one of my favorite characters in One Piece, and I probably do like him more than Fujitora, but it doesn't take away scenes like this that aren't as like badass, superficially badass, epic displays of power type of thing, don't usually get the credit that they deserve. A very good one, and one I really want to touch in another episode, is everything that happens on Zou, and about about the whole Minx tribe hiding Rizo. that was just an amazing scene. And Fujitora has one right here as well. And um, it leads into a good scene where he's talking to Sakazuki, because Sakazuki, formerly Admiral Akinu, the now Fleet Admiral, he calls Fujitora up because he was in a meeting with the Gorosei, for God's sake. And that's when this gets sprung on him, that what Fujitora has done here, and he loses a lot of face. And in his mind, the Marines have just lost a lot of face. So he confronts Fujitora and says, "Why the hell did you do this? We could have handled this a much different way. Blame the blame on someone else." And Fujitora really gives it to him. He's like, I'm going to say a quote from Fujitora here, so excuse me from, looking away from the camera here. He says, "If you don't want justice to be dishonored, keep it close to you at all times. If we lose credibility just by admitting fault, we didn't have any in the first place." Wow, that is... It's pulling away the curtain of the Marines and the world government and really giving it to them. Because what Fujitora is saying isn't wrong whatsoever. There are some very honourable members of the Marines who would have joined because that they wanted to prevent people from suffering. They wanted to do good by people. Examples would be your smokers, your Tashigis, your Garps, your Kobes. There are a lot of them there. Fujitora being one himself. But a lot of them aren't. And just that, even just that last bit, we'll just read this last little bit again. If we lose credibility just by admitting fault, then we never had any credibility to begin with. That is real deep stuff that we can utilize in our own life. And I thought it was just a beautiful bit of writing there by Oda. I'm not sure if he's taken that from anything or if it's just his own ideas. Knowing him, there's a reason why this story, in my opinion, is the greatest story of any fictional medium. And there's an example there that is just very beautiful. But after the argument that he has with Sakazuki, Sakazuki bans him from entering any Marine base until he captures Luffy and Law. And Isho, he accepts that. Not just because he doesn't want to go to any Marine bases. I feel like it's more so because even though he does have these negative opinions on what the Marines are and some of the stuff that they do and everything, he's still a man of duty, and Sakazuki has given him an order here that Isho is able to accept. He's like, alright, I just had a shot at you, we're supposedly friends. That builds into a little bit of Sakazuki's character if we get to touch on that more. But Isho accepts and he goes off. Now, kind of pulls a baller move here, and instead of not going to a Marine base, he goes to Marijois, because according to him that was a loophole and that Sakazuki didn't state he couldn't go there. So he makes his way to Marijois for the reverie, and he goes there for a very specific objective. He wants to abolish the 7 warlord system. Now, this has been something that One Piece has been leading to up until this point for the last 800 chapters. The warlords is an interesting concept in theory and a concept that never really works out in the government's favor. We have Crocodile trying to take over a country, Doflamingo who already took over a country. We have Gecko Moria who, you all know who Gecko Moria is. He's not all for freaking the government side. He's very much self-interested. Blackbeard literally used them just so he could get into Impel Down and make his crew even stronger. Not every time, 50% of the time that they hire a warlord, the warlords bend the world government over a barrel and have their way. It barely ever works out for them. And they cause a lot of harm to the civilians and innocent people around them because they're in a position of power where the world government can't really touch them. They can touch them, obviously, but they turn a blind eye to everything, and that causes more harm than what is needed. And Fujitora sees this, he sees it firsthand with everything in Dressrosa, and he goes to Marie-Joie to try and accomplish this task of abolishing the Seven Warlords. I honestly think that the abolishment of the Seven Warlords is something that Sakazuki would kind of be for as well. I know he's a little bit hesitant for it because this was around the time that Big Mom and Kaido were forming an alliance, but Sakazuki does not appreciate any form of pirates. This would have been a long-term goal, I reckon, for Sakazuki to abolish this system as well. So I reckon Fujitora may have had more support for this idea than he originally thought. But anyway, he goes there to abolish the warlord systems. He meets the new Admiral Aramaki. I nearly blanked on his name there. And they have a little chat. They seem to be getting along fairly good enough. That sours very quickly, because after the revolutionaries come in to break into Marie-Joie to rescue Bartholomew Kuma, Fujitora encounters them escaping with a bunch of slaves. And this is what I meant in the first 5 minutes of the video. Fujitora is very much against slavery, and while he doesn't support the revolutionary, oh my god, that was a great stumble. Well, he doesn't support the revolutionaries' actions. As in the sense of as a whole, like he probably thinks that then the good that they're trying to do is like there's better ways to go about it, essentially. But in the short term, he's not going to stop people from rescuing slaves, so he lets them go. And once again, it just goes to show how morally just he is of a character. And conversely, it goes to show how opposite he is to Aramaki, who treats the celestial nobles as gods, literal gods. Because Aramaki sees what he's doing, and they have a clash. Now, it's off screen, so we don't really see what happens. We do know that Isho gets a little bit injured. I would like to think, logically speaking, I don't believe that Aramaki could beat Isho. I reckon Isho would have won that fight. In the actual fight, I don't reckon it led to a winner or loser. I reckon it probably resulted in a draw, in the sense that they both probably backed off. They can't do serious fighting in Marie-Joie. But I do reckon if that fight did continue to, go, that Fujitora would have probably won that one. Fujitora's strength as an admiral, you know what, I think I'm going to leave that because ranking the admirals video sounds very good, and I'll put that in the pipeworks to release some content like that. Let me know in the comments if that's something that would interest you guys. Now, before we start getting into his feats and his powers, there's one more personality trait of his that I do want to touch on, and it's his love of gambling. When we first meet Fujitora, he's in a gambling house, and he's gambling? He's playing roulette against some of Doflamingo's henchmen. But even though he loves just playing, he loves just gambling in general, the more interesting aspect of this gambling trait, also, quick sidebar, the actor that he's based on in that Zatauchi film also loves to gamble. Just another, reference to that. But with the gambling stuff, it is that he likes to live his life off of fate. He carries around some dice, and he will roll them and decide his actions based on the roll that comes up. It's quite an interesting character trait. I can't really think of any other One Piece characters that have something like that, but he does strongly believe in fate. The biggest example of this is when, after Luffy's defeated Doflamingo, each day Fujitora will roll the dice, and if they come up odds or evens, I can't remember how he was doing it, but if it came up in Luffy's favor, he would let them go for the day. If it didn't, he would go and then attack him. And for 2 days in a row, it was leading to Luffy's, it was leading to Luffy's benefit. It was telling Fujitora not to go after him. Now, this is quite an interesting character trait that brings up a lot of different stuff that could happen later on into the series. It does give Oda a very nice out if Fujitora is fighting someone and Oda doesn't want a decisive victory either or. He could use the dice to help Fujitora get out of that battle. Um, but it is just, it goes to show and symbolize that Fujitora is, while he's pragmatic, he's also a man that's essentially believing in a higher power and is willing to live his entire life by that power. It demonstrates a certain, not a certain, it certainly demonstrates quite a high level of faith, which I think is very fitting for Fujitora's character. But anyway, let's start getting into some of Fujitora's feats and abilities. Because some of you might not know, but there's been some recent information in SBS regarding Isho, something that we didn't know about him, and that's regarding his sword. It's been nameless since he's been introduced, but it has currently got a name, and we even have a grade for it. It is a Saijo Owazamono sword. So I imagine that is probably, we have Ace, Roger's sword, we have Whitebeard's Naginata, Hawkeye's Yoru, um, we have Gandhi's Saint, Ethan Baron Nazjuro, whatever his name is. We believe he has Shodai Katetsu. So that's about five. Of course, Gandhi's sword hasn't actually been ranked yet, but it's very much theorized that that is. I don't. Has Griffin been ranked as an Saijo or Wazamono? For anyone that doesn't know, Griffin is Shanks' sword. I'm not sure on that one. Leave it down in the comments if you guys have confirmation on that. But yes, we can add Fujitora's sword to that. It is named Yakuza Kaizen, and it was forged by. Hold on, I wrote that one down somewhere. It was forged by Fugetsu Kisaburu. He was one of the swords makers from Wano. Here's a tangent coming. The fact that I know it's a tangent, though, does that make it a tangent? A little bit of a if a forest falls in a tree, if a tree falls in a forest and no one's around to hear it, doesn't make a sound. Debate it in the comments. But does Isho come from Wano? Now, we know he wasn't born there because he was born in the Grand Line, and I'm pretty sure it was Paradise, not the New World. But does his parents originate from Wano? He very much has a traditional Japanese look about him, so it very much wouldn't surprise me, especially because he's got now this legendary sword, and he fits he fits the blind samurai gimmick perfectly. So it wouldn't surprise me if he wasn't, if his parents weren't born in Wano, or if he didn't spend some time in Wano. That would have been really interesting if he made an appearance to come join the Battle of Onigashima. But for now, we don't really know on that. I would like to think in my headcanon that he does have ties to Wano, but leave that down in the comments what you guys think on that. But anyway, let's get into his abilities. So we know his sword is a Saijo or Wazamono, and we know he's skilled with it enough to fend off people like Zoro and Luffy just with his swordsmanship skills. I was going to touch on this a little bit later, but since we are talking about his sword and we're just about to talk about his devil fruit, has his sword eaten the devil fruit? For the longest time, I reckon for the longest time people were leaning more towards the fact that the sword had the Zushi no Mi, the gravity fruit, and Fujitora was wielding it. I think a lot of people were believing that because it's something we haven't really seen before, especially on such a prominent character, and it would have been a pretty cool, characteristic for him, make him very Bleach-esque. But let me know, because either or, there's no proof one way or the other. Um, I suppose that there would be more evidence going to the fact that the sword has eaten the devil fruit, but we haven't seen any detractors on why Fujitora wouldn't have eaten it. The only thing that the sword has going for it is that one, we've just found out that it's a Saijo Owazamono. Just the fact that it's such a rare and legendary blade may have been more incentive to have it have the devil fruit power. And two, and the more compelling reason, every time Fujitora wields his devil fruit power, it's with his sword. However, that doesn't necessarily mean anything at all. It could just be easier for Fujitora to use his sword as a medium to use his power. I mean, he could chuck it away and start throwing hands at people. We just really don't know. Once again, for about the 10th thing in this video, let me know down in the comments what you guys think on that one. But let's get into some of his abilities. He has let's say three main abilities that he uses, and it all centers around gravity, obviously. The first one is making gravity on an object much heavier. It's it's not some sort of new anime ability. We've all seen it before in many different forms of anime. That's the very first attack that he uses on Dofi's henchmen in the gambling hall. He uses it to completely crush them into the ground. He makes like 100-meter wide hole, and they're unconscious on the bottom of it. He also uses this technique to hold down Zoro for a time. That's an incredible feat. This was a Zoro that could cut down Pika in one move. He wasn't able to do it continuously though. His other ability is that he can change the direction of his gravity. It doesn't have to be up or down like you see in a lot of anime. He can make it horizontal, so he can unleash gravity blast known as Raging Tiger. Think of Pain's Almighty Push in Naruto. He uses it against Sabo and he uses it against Luffy. I actually really like the attack. In the anime, it looks superb. Everything kind of goes black and whitish, and everything gets distorted, and Luffy goes flying after getting hit by it. It's a really cool looking move. The other main time we see him use his ability is to cancel out gravity on objects and to then float them into the air and use them as projectiles. Now, he was able to do this on an island level scale. I'm kind of staying away from power scaling these days. A lot of my earlier videos, we touched on it a lot more, but it's too contentious for me and it kind of takes out a lot of the fun of it. But I would call this an island level feat. I would definitely say Fujitora at the bare minimum is island level. I should say it was four main abilities, not three. The fourth ability that we'll get into is even more likely to make him probably above island level. But he uses this to try chase the Straw Hat Alliance and use it to crush their entire fleet, basically. But we know that Fujitora doesn't really mean Luffy any harm, so he kind of lets them get away. But it's still a ridiculous feat. It may even be up there, at least at like that time, from when he did that, I think it was somewhere in the 700s and before. That was probably up there with like the top three, greatest feats that we've seen. One of them would have been Luffy a few episodes prior punching Dofi through Dressrosa. And the other one would probably be Whitebeard and his capabilities with the Gura Gura no Mi. Those would be the main ones I can think of off the top of my head. I might be missing a few. But the other ability that he has is to summon meteorites. Yeah, you heard me. Summon meteorites down from freaking space. He's going Madara Uchiha on their asses, and he can seemingly do it without restraint. They vary in size, and Fujitora is a little bit reckless, surprisingly, with it. He uses it when Doflamingo has the bird cage up, and it slices his meteor apart and destroys a bit of Dressrosa. He also uses it in Marie-Joie, and Aramaki goes mad at him because it's like it's endangering all the world nobles' lives. I kind of like to think with that latter situation, Fujitora just did not care. It definitely seemed like in Dressrosa he was having a little bit of an airheaded moment and just forgot. But I do like to think in Marie-Joie he's just like, oh, so what? It'll kill a few world nobles. The world could do with a few less of them. But he can summon meteorites down. We first see it when he fights, and this let's start going in. Let's segue this into his feats. He fights Doflamingo and Law around the beginning of Dressrosa, and that's his opening move. That's his welcome gift. A little bit of an introduction on what type of monster these two warlords are dealing with. And he brings down the wall. He brings down the warlord. It's a good name for an attack. He brings down the meteorite, and like Dofi and Law are strong combative, so they're able to stop it. But even someone like Doflamingo is like he's shown to be sweating, and he loses his composure, and pretty much calls him a crazy monster. It doesn't mean this. What I'm about to say doesn't mean anything. But Dofi didn't even react this way to seeing Whitebeard's powers, about with the tsunamis and the massive earthquakes and something like that. Like Doflamingo literally looked terrified here. It's it's not me. It's not Jack saying admirals are stronger than admirals are stronger than Yonko. I have a whole video on that. One of the best videos that have ever been on my channel in terms of views. Go look at that if you want to roast me. That video did not age well with some of the things that came out just after that happened. But anyway, go look at it. It's quite a good video in my opinion. But they have that confrontation. Fujitora's never in harm whatsoever. He's always the one controlling the battle. He pretty definitively beats Law. I know a lot of Law fanboys might say otherwise, and I would say that Law probably could have done more in the fight. He needed to reserve energy and stuff like that, but it didn't really seem like Law had any way at all to beat Fujitora. He fights Sabo, the number 2 of the Revolutionary Army, who had just recently eaten the Mera Mera Flame fruit. Now, Sabo's strength before eating the Flame fruit, we can only go off narrative there. He's number 2 of the force that is going up against the world government. I would have said that he was admiral level before eating the fruit. There's no real evidence to suggest that, though. I just find it very unlikely that Dragon was walking around with his revolutionary army with combatants that couldn't stack up to the admirals. Because we have Ivankov that didn't do the best against Magellan, and I would say he's either at there or bordering admiral level. I reckon Kuma is one of the strongest warlords that there is. If you didn't include Blackbeard and you didn't include present day Law, I would probably say Kuma is the second strongest warlord behind Hawkeye. So I would say Kuma is up there with an admiral level. If he couldn't beat an admiral, he was certainly contending with them. So I do think that the Revolutionary needs some power behind them. So in my headcanon, at least, Sabo was, relative to an admiral. He just got the flame fruit, so he should be even stronger. It's unquantifiable how much stronger because he just ate it. But either way, Fujitora is able to clash with him and hold him off without putting in 100% effort. Sabo probably isn't either, but it does look like Sabo is struggling more than Fujitora. So I would say at that point in the story, and probably still currently as well, Fujitora would probably be stronger than Sabo. His other main feat that he has, and I think the last one I want to touch on, I'm just trying to think if there's any I'm missing. No, the last one I want to touch on is his fight with Luffy. we got into all the cutesy moments between the two of them and their dialogue and everything like that. But Luffy tries gear second and gear third and isn't able to hit Fujitora. Um, and Fujitora pretty much just he doesn't one shot him obviously because Luffy doesn't get defeated, but he does end the fight by sending Luffy flying off into the distance. Gear 4th Luffy still wouldn't be able to beat Fujitora. Come fight me in the comments if you want. But Gear 4th Luffy is Doflamingo level, and Doflamingo definitely is weaker than Fujitora. Just with the scenes in the throne room of Fujitora effortlessly blocking Doflamingo, Doflamingo being one-shotted by Aokiji back in Punk Hazard, Aokiji most likely being relative to Fujitora, and just the narrative implying it by how kind of scared makes him sound like a little bitch, which is I know what a lot of you people are going to think. So instead of scared, hesitant to face him. So I would say Fujitora at Dressrosa is stronger than everyone else on that island. The only ones in the series that could contend with him up until that point are your other admirals, your Gorosei, Dragon, and the Yonko. We'll quickly touch on his haki. It's very quick. He's I'll even just go into his most impressive form of it is observation haki. He has an unparalleled level of it. We never saw any future sight. I would be very shocked if he didn't have it. I would potentially quit doing YouTube if he didn't have it. But he sees people in colored silhouettes, which is a really interesting look into how his observation works. It's essentially that he isn't blind at all. But yeah, so I would say, I mean, once again, just complete headcanon here. If Oda came out and said Fujitora was the best user of observation haki in the series, I wouldn't be up in arms about it. I feel like it suits well for someone that we know is so powerful and that someone that obviously lacks his eyesight. So I think that would be a pretty cool trait. But that's pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about with Fujitora. He's definitely one of my favorite admirals, but even saying that is hard to rank where he would be because I honestly reckon the admirals are some of the best characters in One Piece. Not only will I rank their strength, but I can even rank them as characters and how much I just personally like them if you guys are interested in something like that. But this video has been probably another long one, probably longer than my chapter review with how I'm going with it, and I think it has only been 2 or 3 cuts, which I think is a personal best for me. So assuming that you guys have gotten this far, have dealt with all the tangents and talking over myself and talking in circles, it's been my pleasure to be able to bring you guys this video. Make sure to leave a like and comment below. How many times did I tell you to comment this episode? Like 10 times. I expect all 10 of them. But subscribe as well. And I've been Jack Cypher. It's been a pleasure deciphering Fujitora. But peeps, have a great day. I'll see you in the next one. Cypher out.